So now I'll start. So hello everyone. So welcome and thank you for attending the ICSE Diversity and Inclusion panel. Today we'll discuss and debate how we can improve diversity and inclusion in our software engineering community. We have a long history of trying to do so, but we know we have a long way to go. Today it's our honor to have our four panelists to present ideas that we will then debate together. We also have three chairs here for this panel, including myself. I think everyone, why don't we introduce ourselves? Let's start with the chairs, I think. I'll go first. So my name is Yu Huang. I'm currently a PhD student at the University of Michigan. But I'm graduating in 3 weeks, and I will join Vanderbilt University as an assistant professor. Thank you, everyone. My research is on human aspects of software engineering. So next, Emerson, Peggy, you two want to?
Sure. So I'm Emerson Murphy-Hill, a research scientist at Google. I go by he and him. And I also research software developer diversity and inclusion. Peggy?
Sure. My name is Peggy, which is short for Margaret Ann, and I go by she, her. And thanks for that nudge there, Emerson. I'm at the University of Victoria, and I study human and social aspects, and I'm passionate about diversity and inclusion in software engineering development and also in research, and I can't wait for this panel today. So excited.
Yeah, wonderful. So next, our four awesome panelists. So I guess I'll go with the order that, in the way I can see on the screen. So Alex, you want to go first?
Hi, I'm Alexander Sturebrenning. I'm from Eindhoven University of Technology in the Netherlands. My pronouns are he, his, and him. I study human aspects, diversity, similar to Peggy and Emerson, but also emotion, and of course, how people work together.
Brittany, you want to go next?
So hi, everyone. I'm Brittany Johnson Matthews. My pen name is Brittany Johnson. I am an assistant professor at George Mason University. My research is also in human factors and software engineering. I'm particularly interested in things like developer productivity, ethical software development practices, and technology and how it's used in practice.
Alana, you want to go next?
Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Alana Olson, and I'm a PhD candidate in the Information School at the University of Washington. My pronouns are they and them. I study strategies, techniques, and tools for inclusive software design education, specifically focusing on inclusion through the lens of normative design biases, like the way software encodes gender, race, and class.
Awesome, thank you. So Steph.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie Forrest, and I'm a professor at Arizona State University, and I also direct the Biodesign Center for Biocomputation, Security, and Society, and that sums up my research interests. I think my main claim to fame is that I've been in computing for a long time and seen many things change, some for the better, some for the worse, and then some things that haven't changed enough.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Can't wait for our panel. So thank you again for joining us. Here I want to say, for the audience who might not be familiar with the Clouder setup, you can find the chat channel of this room on the top right corner. So from now on, we will start with some questions. At the same time, I will type the questions in the chat channel so everyone can see them. Anytime, please share us your ideas, comments, or questions, anything in the chat. We'll keep tracking it and include them in our discussion. So first, I think I will just, start with the first question for our panelists. And this question is kind of tough, everyone. It is, in what ways do you think our community systematically excludes groups of people? Anyone volunteer to go first? Let me type this question so our audience can see that.
Start, because I actually, this question made me think. I was thinking about this question in the panel I was in yesterday with the one we mentioned before, the right problems. And I think Titus mentioned an interesting point that I think relates to this, in that we tend to be kind of particular about the kind of works that we consider our software engineering and that we accept in this community. And I think that does us a huge disservice, particularly in terms of diversity and inclusion, because you see a lot of interdisciplinary work happening that does relate, I think, to our community. And a lot of that's happening with groups that are considered underrepresented or minority groups, mainly because we're so passionate about it, having to experience it ourselves. And so I think that that's one way that intentionally or not, that systemically we are excluding certain groups of people by looking at the types of works that we see value in our community.
I just want to second that. I wrote down intellectual diversity, and I think we may still be teasing out what the connection is between diversity of ideas and other kinds of diversity, but our field will only flourish if we consider a wider range of ideas, and I think a lot of more senior scientists always say that things aren't as good as they used to be, but I do feel like our field has become more conservative in some ways intellectually.
I can kind of hop in and maybe expand a little bit more meta on that is, when I was thinking about my answer to this question, one of the things that struck me was this really pervasive notion that, like, if you're going to be successful in this field, CS has to be like your passion. Like, you got to spend your free time like building robots and working on open source software and stuff. But, if you think about all the people who, might not have the inclination to do that, like maybe they're what we call a non-traditional student and they have a family and a career, or they have to work to support themselves, like, first-gen students or lower income students. Maybe the makerspace is up a flight of stairs and this person's in a wheelchair and they like physically cannot get into the space where things are happening. Or maybe they just want to treat this like a job, which is totally valid. Like, this could just be a career. It doesn't have to be your life. So on top of the things that we research and endorse like that, right, we also need to kind of normalize this idea that you can be a full member of the community without having to make your life here and only here as well.
Yeah. I think, just one comment for what Alana just said. I know that today among our audience, we have quite some junior faculty. So we also really want to, know how can we improve our diversity in our research group, like that kind of advice. Yeah, we can definitely talk more about that. Yeah. Alex.
Just wanted to add something which is probably more obvious, but should be mentioned. Software engineering is not limited to ICSE. Software engineering is not limited to English-speaking or more or less English-speaking communities. And we are completely forgetting about it. And the barriers we are imposing on people are enormous, from generic things like, software engineering issues, science issues in general, to much more specific things to our communities. It's conference-based, registration fees are exuberant. Used to be completely exuberant. Papers behind paywalls, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think what Alex said and Steph said kind of, relevant. I want to second what Steph mentioned about intellectual diversity, because my own work, I use medical imaging, software engineering. I kind of feel, because of the nature of software engineering, we just cannot avoid touching many aspects in computer science. But it seems like based on the topic, we have a lot of challenges to introduce like newer things to our community.
I just want to jump in. I don't know how long we have on this question, but one thing that I've observed, and I will say I've interviewed for very few jobs in the past 20 years, but I've certainly been a participant on the interviewing side many, many times. And what I've observed, this is more of an academic comment, might be true in industry, but there's a much narrower spectrum of acceptable personality types for members of underrepresented groups. And so I guess I've experienced it more, I think, in terms of women, but if you're like too shy or too lacking in confidence or too deferential, then you get told you're never going to be successful in the classroom, or you're not tough enough. But on the other hand, if you come across like some of the other members of our field who are arrogant and always have an answer for everything and always think they're right, et cetera, then that's not acceptable either, in some of the groups that we think we want to include. And so I feel like that's kind of a more subtle, nuanced thing, but I have observed it over and over and over again in evaluations of candidates, especially young candidates who are interviewing for jobs. And that's that's not an easy thing to fix, but yeah.
I'm curious, like right now in our interview process, do our committees like on purpose pay attention to that kind of aspects at all? Like, do we try to do some mitigations to that? No.
Well, I was going to save this for a later question, but one of the mitigations I did when I was department chair, the year before I became department chair, and I knew that I was going to be taking over, I sat in the front row for every single faculty interview, and we happened to have 3 women and 3 men. And I kept a little tally of how many times each candidate was interrupted during his or her talk. And my faculty, they thought we didn't really have a problem. They all thought they had wives with important jobs, and of course they weren't discriminating against certain kinds of people. And then I showed them the data.
Wow, that
And
is.
they had many interesting explanations for the data. It was totally bimodal. I mean, the women were getting interrupted 2 or 3 times as often as the men. And after that, I felt like something shifted just in the dynamics of the discussion. So it seems to me that you have to do you have to have some kind of concrete evidence that kind of wakes people up and then makes them think about it. And I'm sure all of you who have expertise in the research topics you mentioned probably have a more scientific way to go at it. But
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because one of the points that I had also thought about when I was looking at this question was the consideration, or really lack thereof in a lot of ways, that there are in the studies that we do in our community for the different groups of people that are in the developer community, in the research community, right? And really using our skills to better understand the problem, to be able to come up with solutions that are going to actually work, versus using anecdotes, which we often will do, and that's fine to start with. But having that data can make a difference with awareness, as well as coming up with.
I just also think we should acknowledge some of these great comments in the chat.
Yeah.
A great piece of advice I was given by a senior female computer scientist when I was an assistant professor was that students wanted you to be their mom. They didn't want you to act like some remote whatever. And so that's just acknowledging something in the chat. And the comment about Africa, I'm absolutely on board with. I think our pricing structure is ridiculous.
Yeah, there was like an earlier comment by I can't see the name on the screen, but it's about in computer science, our faculty used to kind of include video games as the default culture for us. I actually have a lot of personal experience on that. I don't play video games that much. So actually, when I took my first CS class, I thought I didn't belong to this community. So, we have like a faculty here. We even have like people from industry. I don't know, like what are your guys' thoughts on that? What can we do to change that? But we also don't want to exclude the people who play video games, right? Like we want to have both. So.
I can speak to that. I think, you mentioned like we don't want to exclude the people that play video games. They exist already. They have their space. Like, I don't think anything we do is going to drive them out of computer science at the moment, right? Like they're doing great. But yeah, to my earlier point about like normalizing like who gets to be part of this community and who should be part of that community, I think a lot of it is bound up in the way we teach, and especially in intro programming classes. You see a lot of like programming as a game, as like something creative, which is awesome and can be super empowering for sure. But if, like you said, you don't like games and you don't relate to games, it's not going to be something that draws you in as well. So finding those alternate framings that like can work for more people, I think, is a really important part of this.
Yeah.
Comment on this as well. I just watched today a very nice keynote of Amy Kaw at Respect 2021, and I wholeheartedly recommend it. So Amy was talking about the fact that people who are in dominant positions in our sub-community might be marginalized and ostracized by the society at large. So those nerdy types who like playing video games might escape to computer science exactly because of this. So we should not be trying to discount their experiences as irrelevant. We need to try to find a way to include all kinds of expectations and experience.
So I also want to second Denise's comment in the chat. She mentioned that, why don't we just bring experts on diversity inclusion in our PC? I totally agree with that. Especially, actually not just that, like, because I'm always wondering how can we design effective interventions. So, after we figure out we have this kind of problem, what can we do to change that? Like, how can we collaborate with those experts? I don't know if anyone here has an experience to share with us. How should we do that? How can we establish collaborations? What can we do?
Do it. They're they're there and they're passionate about this, and they're always happy to talk about the research that they've done, and even better to talk about ways to move things forward. So I think the way to do it is literally to just do it.
Yeah, and especially for those of us that are in university context, right? Like they're literally like 500 feet away in the next building. One of my next projects is going to be looking into some of the ways that, identity constructs are like embedded in code. And I'm not a critical theorist. My background is in computer science, right? So I have a friend who studies all of this from like the STS, Science, Tech, and Society studies and like critical and queer theory perspectives. And we're going to collaborate. It's going to be great. And it's going to make the project a lot better than it would if I was trying to learn all this on my own. So yeah, leverage that expertise.
I just have one comment about this, which is, you're absolutely right, both of you, Brittany and Alana, that we should just do it. And they're not very far away. But I also think that social science has discovered kind of computing and machine learning and they're kind of flocking in. And we should not neglect the fact that we might have a positive influence on their field, because there is a lot of social science that is not very deep. And there's a lot of social science that's really great, but I think both fields could profit by bumping up against each other and learning.
Yeah.
There's a great question in the chat that I don't have an answer for, but it's a question that I've been asked so many times in my career. I hope one of the other panelists can.
I mean, Preet has a question, right? Because I heard that comment at this cycle when I applied to job too. So the question is, sometimes we got comments such as, oh, you got this job because you're a woman or you're a minority. How do we address such questions?
Yeah, who's got advice on this one?
Sorry. No, I was going to say, first of all, it's really not a question, it's a statement, and it's a misplaced statement, first of all. Second of all, for me personally, I tend to be very researchy in my response, and it's very much data-driven, right? So if I got this job because I'm a woman or because I'm Black, so I must have also gotten my publications because I'm Black and a woman. And I must have also gotten citations on those papers because I'm a Black woman. I must have also connected with all these people, and done these collaborations because I'm a Black woman, right? Like it's very much a data-driven thing, right? Like, I mean, maybe I got this job because I'm a Black woman, but my credentials speak for themselves in a lot of ways. And I think we're very quick to shoot ourselves down and not as quick to hype ourselves up. And I've gotten in the habit lately of hyping myself up. So I think that's, one way to approach those type of criticisms that are completely misplaced again.
I can also sort of add on to that with some of my own experiences. I'm non-binary. I came out maybe a year and some change ago, and I have personally, seen the increase in the ways that the stuff I get asked to do and the positions and work I get asked to take on, just because I am highly visible within this community. And maybe that correlates with like I'm doing more research now and whatever. But one of the things I've been trying to do in those situations is accept that, okay, so maybe I'm doing this work or whatever, but I can bring others along with me as well, right? Like I can shout out to other marginalized researchers or educators or whatever, and it's like, all right, if you're going to make me be the only person here, at least I can like pull some other people in, and so I don't have to be the only one doing it all the time.
My advice, if there's junior faculty on the panel, is what you're talking about, Alana, absolutely happens. If you're a minority of one sort or another, and we have many sorts on our panel, you will be asked to be on more committees. You'll be asked to do more outreach. You'll be asked to meet with more groups, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you should go to your department chair and have that discussion. And I don't think that especially at the assistant professor level, you have no obligation to do more than your colleagues who are not being asked those extra things. And if you want to do them and feel moved to do them, then you need some kind of compensation, whether it's an extra TA for your class or a course release or whatever. But if you find yourself, I'm really lecturing the junior people or the soon-to-be junior faculty, if you find yourself taking on a lot more service than your colleagues at a similar level, you need to rethink what you're doing, and you need to ask for help.
I kind of feel right now in our community when we heard about that kind of comment, it just shows the fact that some people, they only focus on the fact that, oh, this person is from the minority group, but they always ignore one more important fact, which is the value our minority groups bring to our community. Like one good example in our department setting, say universities, when students see someone similar to them as a faculty in the department, it's actually a big encouragement for them to think about, oh, maybe I should also participate in this major too. Yeah, that's something people always ignore. They only say something like, oh, she's a woman. They are from minority groups. I think it's our duty to just state it out loud all the time, pay attention to the values, different people with different background brings to our community. I think there was one question before, but Peggy, Emerson, you need to help me because my interface doesn't allow me to scroll up, but I know there's a good question there.
Comments about having advisors from other disciplines and that's really helpful. I think Danae had a question. Oh no, we went over that one already. I think we could probably move on to one of the next kind of structured questions even. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So our second question prepared for our panels today is, because our panels, some are faculty, some are students, junior, senior faculty. I wonder, can you share with us some of your own experiences, advice, or philosophy on how you improve the diversity in our community?
I'll start again while my little one is actually chilling out for now. And this is something for me that I've had experience with on my end as a researcher, as well as something that I've done. But I feel like it's a simple thing that we don't realize the value in, but like speaking up for people, right? Like speaking up for people. And this even makes me think of the question that I think it was Preeta that had about, I'm a woman and people think I got this job because I'm a woman, right? It's as simple as someone who's not a woman saying, oh, we hired her, she's awesome. We hired her. She did X value to our department, to our university, to our community. And sometimes it's that, we're saying things in group settings. So I think I was on a panel like last year or something like that. And I made a statement. And 5 minutes later, someone else made the exact same statement as if I hadn't just said it. And there was someone on the panel who actually said like, oh, actually, that sounds like exactly what Brittany just said a minute ago, right? It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And that actually, I feel like goes a really long way to making people feel a part of the community and not like they're just there as a placeholder.
And you can do that at any level. So you can do it either as a graduate student in a class that's a discussion. You can do it certainly as a professor when you're teaching. if you feel students are being run over one way or another, you can work really hard. And especially, we have a lot of students who don't speak, in my case, English as a native language. And so helping them learn to express themselves, I think, is important. And certainly when we build our research groups, I think it's very important to think about kind of the culture of your group and how to make the environment safe. And I should just say, I did the math, and I have over 85% members of underrepresented groups in my research group at the moment. And I don't do anything special to recruit them. But there's just something, there's just a whole set of things that you can do, I think, to make students who are coming in from other disciplines or who have other kinds of ways they're unique, to give them the space to mature. And then on the hiring side, there's a lot that you can do. And the data thing I already mentioned, hit your fellow faculty with some data. But I think the other thing is I have come to value building a deep pool. And that does not happen, by a deep pool, I mean a deep pool of candidates from other, the candidates of the demographics you're trying to hire. And if you only have one minority or one woman in your pool, those are the ones that we can learn about. We learn about at application time. The chances are a better university than yours is going to hire them, even if you like them. So what you really have to do, is have more than half your pool of candidates you're interviewing. And to get really good candidates, I spent my life at lesser prestigious universities. You have to work really, really hard to get people like you to apply to your jobs. And anyway, I guess I've been burned so many times by being on search committees where they say, oh, well, we've got a woman. That's all we need to do.
Your point would be what?
And she looks really good.
Yeah. Alex, Elena, anything?
Yeah. What Stephanie said about, you can do this work in any position. I kind of want to circle back to that a bit and talk about my own experience as a grad student, right? And sort of speak to like that experience. I'm sure everyone knows a story of like really toxic advising, like relationships. If you've been on Twitter this past week, like that's a whole thing that's going on. And it's not a secret that like academia can be a really weird place to like advocate for yourself as a PhD student. But I'm lucky enough to have an advisor who is not gonna retaliate against me for having spicy ideas about computer science. And one of the ways that I have been able to use that privilege, and it really is a privilege to have an advisor who supports me in doing that, is as a PhD student, I've been able to kind of be the voice for like others in my cohort or other like more junior students. We had a student whose advisor, there was like a whole situation going on with that. I won't get too far into it, but basically they didn't feel comfortable coming forward to, the admins because they were afraid they might lose funding. So I was able to, with my position of privilege within academia, knowing that I'm not going to like be dropped from my RA ship, was able to kind of intercede and like be that person's advocate for admin and like help them bring it up in a safe space. So I don't know, I guess just like speaking to like the junior faculty or like the PhD students who think like they can't do much, it's like find the ways that you have power, because you do. I mean, you're in academia, you have some power somewhere, and use it to support those that don't. Bit of a ramble, but.
Right, I maybe can connect to what Helena was just saying. You can try to provide an alternative environment in a sense that it's not necessarily your faculty or your university is not necessarily the entire world. So the conferences we are organizing is one of the possible alternatives. This is a place where you are meeting people who are in some sense very different from people you are seeing every day. But they might be very similar to you because of demographics, because of experiences, because of the expectations. So this is why it's so important to use those conferences as a networking mechanism. And that's what we try to do this year with ICSE, with all kinds of meetups. And I hope that the upcoming conferences will try to go in a similar direction to provide some other mechanism for networking.
Yeah.
And I just want to chime in, I'm sorry, really quick, because I'm actually privileged enough right now to have my PhD advisor on the panel as a moderator right now. And I do want to highlight what both Alana and Alexander said, in the fact that, you know, it goes a long way, not only to have a good advisor, but to have an advisor that's willing to go above and beyond to add that comfort for you, to put you in situations that build your confidence and show you that you're not the only one. My first experience in the community outside of the university, where I was actually able to meet other Black researchers doing computing work, was because of my advisor, right? And so I think the advisor is on the advisors in some ways and the faculty members to find those connections and help students make those so that they're able to feel confident and comfortable and supported in the field.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I actually I've heard the term called diversity debt. So which usually refers to because maybe in the past we didn't put enough effort on diversity, which leads to a terrible representation issue, which makes it even harder when you want to change. So I wonder, our panelists, do you have any suggestions, no matter for the department or as like a independent research group, how can we start an initiation to change the situation? Alex was like sighing.
Well, because it's really, really tough. I mean, diversity debt, it's not only the current mix-up of the faculty, for instance, but it's also the culture which has successfully led to this situation. And changing culture is really, really difficult because it's not only, old white guys. You also have people from other demographics, or more junior, who are maybe coming from different backgrounds, but still represent the very same mindset, because this is how they have been selected. And if they happen to have different backgrounds or demographics, then it also pretty much shuts you up. Because of course, we hired a woman, check. And it doesn't really help. So changing culture is really, really tough. And it has to happen in both directions, both bottom up and top down.
And picking up on that a little bit, there was a good question from Miranda asking about, for early career folks who don't have as much influence, how can we try to promote diversity and inclusion without potentially rocking the boat? So is there a potential solution in there in getting more senior people on board and sort of actively talking to them to be that voice, so they're supporting the junior people and bringing these opinions maybe to the foreground? What do you think? I
think they should rock the boat.
And just do it.
What I'm hearing in this panel is graduate students who are afraid to speak back to their advisors, and junior faculty who are afraid to offend a senior faculty. And that is only academia if we let it be that way. And that is only our community if we let it be that way. And, I think I tell my students and I encourage them, everybody should be a free intellectual agent. And, to a large extent, that's in terms of their research, but certainly in terms of issues like this. And my experience is, I don't have as much recent experience in industry, but certainly in academia, certainly in this country, certainly in public universities, there are so many avenues that structures that have been created to sort of support vulnerable members of the community who want to speak up. But mostly, I think you just have to call it like you see it. That's what we've been trained to do. That's what getting a PhD is all about, is, going for truth and beauty, I think. But yeah.
Maybe I can stand for the questioner a little bit here. It's hard when you're a junior person, right? It's your career is on the line. As a grad student, like you're spending a lot of years of your life, and you're not going to just potentially risk throwing that away because because you say something that someone might hear wrong. And so I think that there's junior people can put a lot at risk by doing this. And so I think it's a really good question. As a junior person, what can I do to make it better for myself without putting my career at risk?
I can give just one tip. Look for allies. Look for people who would support you. Senior, junior, whatever.
I also think as a junior faculty, you can do a huge amount with recruiting. And at this particular point in history, I think most of us are in computer science departments one way or another, and most computer science departments are at least paying lip service to this issue. And so, Emerson, I take your point, but I think senior people are on the ropes. We know people in my generation haven't done a very good job. That's why we're having this panel, and we are vulnerable. We're more vulnerable than the junior people are in some ways. So I get it. I get it that you have to be careful what you say and all that. But I have been, in my experience, junior faculty overestimate how vulnerable they are in terms of reprisals if they speak up.
Yeah.
I think most tenure and promotion committees and most department chairs look at your record.
So
And
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, here's a thought to that, and linking to something you said earlier, Stephanie. That it is hard to recruit in minorities, and there's lots of offers, right, going out, and a lot of universities ask people to submit, their D&I statement, right, but maybe they should flip it around, and maybe the junior people should say, if I come here and I rock the boat, what kind of reaction am I going to get? Because I want to do that. And maybe if more people do that and say, you know what, when I interviewed here, you said that I could rock the boat and I came here. I don't know, it's just a thought. Maybe see what the junior folks think about that.
I thought you were going to say that the people interviewing should ask the senior faculty for their DEI statement.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I was. That's exactly what I was trying to hint at. They should say, "What is your opinion? What can I do here? What will you allow me to do? What will you help me do?"
Done. I think we should be asked what we've done.
Oh yeah.
Or maybe currently, for example, at Michigan, our department is thinking about some systematic promotion or recognition we can do to junior faculties when they spend effort on diversity, like for example, in tenure evaluation. But I second what Alex said in the chat. It's hard because you have to organize so many things together to make that actually happen. Yep.
I just wanted to say that don't forget about the size of the fishing pond. My impression is that in the States and in Canada, people are much more mobile than in Europe, partially because in many countries, underground teaching is required to be in the national language. The Netherlands has, 12 universities, not all of them having computer science department or software engineering part of this computer science department. We all know each other. So if you are essentially rocking the boat in such a horrible way that the waves are going outside of your department, you are not only putting your own career in this place in jeopardy, but career in the entire country. There are risks, so don't underestimate the privilege of size you have.
And one thing to throw in here, because I worry it might be getting covered up by all of the fantastic points we've been making here, is I think we do still have to remember that we're telling people you need to speak up, you need to be bold, you need to ask what you've done for diversity, right? But and I think it was Brittany that said earlier, there is a narrower range of acceptable personalities. It might not have been Brittany. I'm so sorry if it wasn't. Whoever it was, but for minorities, right? It's like there will be more impacts if you are further from this stereotype of who should be a computer scientist, and it can have more impactful negative effects for somebody who's already marginalized. So yes, we should definitely be asking. Yes, we should be rocking the boat, but we should also be mindful that it's not going to be an individual thing, because that just puts more work back on the people who have been doing this work since they stepped into their universities or into their companies, right? It's got to be systemic as well.
Yeah. Also, the climate atmosphere plays a big role here too. Like, what can we do to make everyone feel that, oh yeah, it's a great thing for me to speak up. That's also very hard. I kind of feel like, for example, in department, it's very important for the department to say something. For example, send a letter out to everyone when something happened. As time goes by, people will see the difference. They will start feeling that, we care about diversity. We can speak up when we need to. I also want to mention some really good comments in the chat. Some people mentioned, oh, we can have this ACMW chapter, we can have the grad student union, and we can have diversity committee. We need to give them resources to do things, because that's hard. It's even harder than any research problem in the department. Did I miss any? Again, Peggy, Emerson, jump in anytime you see a question.
Yeah, there was also discussion about social media use and how junior and all of us can use social media, and if that is rewarded at all in universities, or any experience with that. Alana, I know you blog quite a bit. What kind of reaction do you see in your university?
I think I am not as good at social media as many in my generation, I will say. But I have definitely seen a really positive reaction. To me, it's really about extending the reach of your work, right? If all you do is publish papers, I mean, we know very few people actually read papers. Let's be honest, they're paywalled half the time. It's mostly just talking to other researchers, which is great and necessary, but there are a lot more people in the world than researchers. So I use social media as kind of a way to, specifically for my particular research area, talk to educators and kind of, take a research paper I just published, and then I write a blog about, here's the actual implications for practitioners. And so, that can be one way of thinking about, we talked about intellectual diversity and reaching different communities. Social media can be really powerful there.
Yeah.
I have two thoughts. One is what I like to say, I summarize as vote with your feet. And I feel that there's a lot of emphasis on including the kinds of diverse communities where we can see the difference. And what we do as faculty, as in academia and as researchers, is we try to only recruit people from the best schools, and we aspire to send our students only to the best schools. And that's not, having spent most of my career at the University of New Mexico, which is a Hispanic majority state, Hispanic and Native American primarily. I think I had more impact just by teaching my regular classes because of where I was. And if the community is really, really serious about trying to include more people, which I'm still a little skeptical about how serious we are, I think we should come up with incentive and reward structures to help people, young faculty, go and be successful in the places where the communities are that that we think are underrepresented. Now, there's a lot of other kinds of diversity, some of which is represented here, but certainly physically disabled people, people with psychiatric differences. Those are sort of not so geographically skewed.
We're just about to be kicked out of here, so I thought I'd pass it to you to say there is a discussion room, I think, right, that we could go to.
Oh, we do have a discussion room. Nice.
So we have like 8 seconds. Do you want to wrap up? No.
In 8 seconds. She's